Welcome to 50 and Starting a Business. This is Laura. I'm so excited for this topic because I looked it up for myself. So now I'm sharing it with you. And it's buying a car under an LLC. So I have this dream car that I've wanted for a long time. It's navy blue with black trim. It kind of looks, it's not as mean as black and black. I think it's a little bit cooler because it's navy and black. But I wanted to see how I could buy it through the LLC of my company, because it would mainly be a company car. I travel a lot for visiting clients. Have a meeting tomorrow, had one yesterday. So having a company car right now, I use my Tesla, but I think we're gonna let our son use that when he gets his driver's license. So anyway, so let's get into this. This is how to buy a car in an LLC. So there's 3 advantages to buying a car under an LLC. One is privacy. If someone tries to look up your car or the license plate, it's going to come up with the LLC's name, not your personal name. I honestly didn't know as an individual that I could actually look at someone's license plates and look up who they are. Unless they meant privacy when I looked this up, privacy from the police. But I don't know how that works either, because if you get pulled over, they're going to want your driver's license. Anyway, so there is privacy. If someone is able to look up the registration of your car, it's going to come up under the LLC's name. Second is liability protection. Again, it's under the LLC. I don't think people buy a car thinking, hey, I might get into an accident and I might get sued and I don't want them to come under my personal assets. But I guess that does happen. People get in accidents all the time. So having the car in the LLC would definitely protect your assets. And number 3 are tax deductions. So you do have the deduction of buying the car, and then you also have tax deductions of the depreciation, and I will get into that in a little bit. Things to consider when buying a car in an LLC is that the tax benefits can kind of be taxing to kind of figure out. Like it can be cumbersome, and I actually was looking at tax tables. They're based on the weight of the car, the age of the car, the classification of the car, and I'm a math person and numbers don't scare me, and definitely tables don't scare me. So I was able to figure it out, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh, okay, so I just, this number and I put this number in, this is it. It was kind of like, no, there's this whole table to it. You do have to kind of sit down and figure it out. You can work with an accountant to figure it out. It's not that difficult, but it's not going to be like a 2-second look at a table and like, there's your depreciation number. So that's something to keep in mind. The whole thing of the tax savings and everything being taxing is that the IRS is going to want proof that this is your business car. They're going to want documentation. They're going to want mileage. So sometimes they're going to want a mileage log. Never done that in my entire life. And they might want a written confirmation. So sometimes the IRS comes back and says, okay, it's a company car. Thanks so much. Fine. And other times they're going to call you up or send you an email or paperwork, and you got to fill it out and just confirm that, yes, this is a company car. And then sometimes they're like, no, we want a mileage log. And I think that might happen with the car that I want to buy, because it's not like a traditional company car. I was talking to my husband about it. He's like, yeah, it's not a company car. So that might be something where they want a mileage log, but I do feel that I would be able to kind of back it up, because I do a lot of driving for work. Some states I learned, and Mississippi of all places is one, Virginia and Rhode Island actually assess property taxes on cars. So you get your car in an LLC, and now they're going to want property taxes on it. It's kind of interesting, because if it's a personal car, an LLC car, they're going to assess property taxes on it. But that is something to keep in mind. Like if you're going to get like, oh, I'm just going to get this like 5th car and have it be part of my LLC, I'm going to write all this stuff off. Just keep in mind, you will have to pay property taxes on that car if you're in Mississippi, Virginia, or Rhode Island. And then the other is look at the total cost. So when you buy a car under an LLC, you might end up paying more for the car in the long run. So interest rates under a business that, let's say, doesn't have a lot of business assets might end up being a lot higher than if you bought the car in your personal assets. So, and there is a way, if you buy a car personally and you have more personal assets and a track record, that you end up having a lower interest rate, but you can still write off the mileage as a business expense. So that's something to keep in mind when you do that. But so the actual mechanics of buying a car in an LLC, so you need to have the EIN, which if you do have an LLC, the LLC will have an EIN, which is the employer identification number or the federal tax identification number. That's the EIN. So you need an EIN and you need to have a bank account. So those are the two things you need to have. But then you want to consider your financing options. Like, are you buying it outright? Are you going to use a loan from a bank or from a credit union, or are you going to be financing this through the dealership? So you need to make up that mind, and it would be helpful before you go to the dealership to find out what the interest rates are. A lot of times, I think our first car we bought under a credit union, it was a lot less expensive than the dealership or a bank. Then you're going to need to register the vehicle, and you can register the vehicle under the LLC. That's really not a problem. And you need insurance. So the insurance might be a little bit tricky. I know our car and homeowners insurance is bundled together. We own a couple cars, so we get a lower rate since all the cars in the house are with the insurance company. I don't know this for a fact, but I would think that if you are getting a car under the LLC, that's a separate package. They may or may not bundle it all together and give you a favorable rate. So I would look at that before you make the decision to determine, am I better off buying it personally? So there's a lot of numbers moving around here that are definitely helpful to have before you actually go to buy the car. Technically speaking, I know this isn't always used in practice, but you're only allowed to write off the percentage of the car that is actually used for business. So if I am using my car 80% of the time for business and 20% of the time to shuffle the kids around, I can only write off 80%. I know that's not always done in practice, but that is what the IRS states that you are supposed to do. There's actually, the IRS code has section 179. It's called the section 179 deduction. So that's something you can search on the internet to find out exactly. So here's basically how the section 179 deduction works. The car must be a passenger vehicle, a heavy SUV, truck, or van. Sorry, not a motorcycle. But those that would qualify under the section 179 discount. The LLC must use the car, or the business must use the car more than 50% of the time. So it can't be a 20-80 where you're only using it 20% for business, so at least 50% of the time for business purposes. And then the maximum deduction is actually determined by the IRS code. For a 2020 car that weighs between 6,000 and 14,000 pounds, the maximum deduction that you can have purchasing this vehicle is $25,900. Now that's going to change as time goes on. I think with inflation this year, I would imagine that in 2022 there's so much inflation that I would imagine that $25,900 is going to increase as well. But then you're also able to have other deductions, right? So you can, instead of having the $25,900 deduction, you can choose to deduct actual usage. So there's two different ways you can do that. One is 57.5 cents per mile driven. So so you keep track of your mileage log. It's 57.5 cents per mile, and that's what you can deduct. Or you can deduct actual expenses. So you can deduct the actual gas you pay, the actual oil, if you need a new tire, if you get into fender bender and you need to get something replaced, those can actually get deducted, minor accidents and all that. But you can't do the 57.5 per mile and the accidents. And then from there, you can deduct depreciation of the vehicle. And that can play in big time with this, okay, I only get $25,900. Well, no, not necessarily. You can actually deduct a lot more, and you can use straight line depreciation, which is the same amount over 5 years, or you can do accelerated depreciation where you get a much larger deduction in year one. And that might be something you want to think about when it comes to your business. Like maybe most people want to recoup the loss right away. It's usually more advantageous to do that. But maybe there are some cases where spreading it out over 5 years and having that deduction. So there are different ways that you can deduct vehicles. I would tell you the things that I would really look at when I'm deciding. It's going to be, what are the interest rates that I'm able to get on my loan if I am having a loan, if it's in my business or personal, and then insurance. Is the insurance going to be much more expensive if it's business or personal? So look at those two things. It's not really that, mechanically, it's not that difficult to buy a car under your LLC. So good luck. I hope this was helpful. Please leave comments, subscribe, like the video. And again, if you have your own YouTube channel, or you're setting up your own business and you want to share it with me, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're doing and see if I can be helpful in any way. Have a nice day.